Do you ever feel like you don't belong in your biological family? Like you're there just to be a scapegoat for other people's frustrations and pride? I've always tried to please my father, the man who has always been the symbol of honor and success in the family. But every effort has been ignored. I'm not a doctor like my sister. I'm not an engineer like my brother. I'm just a teacher, a job my father calls a freeloader. And then came this year's family reunion, where all the pent-up resentment finally exploded. As he raised his glass in front of more than 30 relatives, my father said loudly and clearly, "I'm proud of all my children, except one." He looked straight at me. All eyes were on me as if I was the only thing that didn't deserve to be in the room. I smiled, not because I was sad, but because it was time for me to fight back. Because I knew a secret that was enough to tear apart the image of a model father that he had worked so hard to build for more than 3 decades. And in less than 3 minutes, no one in the family dared to look up to him like before. Welcome to Judgy Tales, where true stories, hilarious situations, bitter revenge, and moments of moral judgment are told without reservation. If you like messy family stories, dramatic come-ons, and confessions that no one dares to tell, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because after all, everyone needs to be heard and judged. I grew up in a family where everything was measured by achievement, not affection, not kindness, but by degrees, fame, income, and praise from outsiders. My father was a man of success in the eyes of the world, an executive who had run 3 companies, always well-dressed, well-spoken, and respected by his relatives. He had an unbreakable rule in life. Only those who were worthy were respected. And for him to recognize you, you had to be successful by his standards. No exceptions, no trying. You were either a winner or an embarrassment. My family has 3 siblings. My eldest sister is the pride of the family, a resident at a prestigious hospital, an excellent student since childhood, and a full scholarship to an Ivy League university. My younger brother is a tech genius. At the age of 25, he already works for a large corporation in Silicon Valley. Those 2, in my father's eyes, are his masterpieces. And me? I am the middle child. And in his eyes, I am the ink stain on a perfect painting. I chose education. Ever since I was a child, I loved telling stories, teaching, and helping others understand things. When I told my father that I wanted to be a high school teacher, he couldn't hide his disappointment. He told me that it was a job for people who weren't capable of doing great things. I used to think that over time, he would understand. That when he saw me standing on the podium with passion and patience in my eyes, he would be proud. But no. Every holiday season, when relatives asked me what I was doing, my father would smile, quickly change the subject, or worse, say that I was temporarily teaching while looking for another direction, as if I was unemployed and just putting out the fire. My mother was the only one who kept some sense of balance in the family, but she was fragile. She didn't dare argue with my father, didn't dare defend me in public. Only in private would she hold my hand and tell me she was proud. But she was also the one who kept repeating the same thing. "It's okay, my child, as long as the family is in harmony. Don't let outsiders see what's going on in our home." I understood her fear. She had lived her whole life under the control of a husband who was too strong and too domineering, and now all she wanted was peace. But that peace was too high a price. It was built on silence, resignation, and the sacrifice of children who didn't fit the mold. Growing up, I lived with the feeling that I had something to prove. I graduated from college with honors, got a scholarship to pursue a master's degree in education, but was never mentioned at family dinners, where my father would raise a glass to praise my sister and brother for every little step forward. I once won the county's Most Innovative Teacher of the Year award, an award that only 2 people in the entire city had ever won. I came home to show it off to my family, bringing my certificate. My father looked at it and said, "Teachers these days are just praised for the sake of it. They don't do anything that great." Then he turned to my brother and asked him about his latest AI project. I remember laughing, but my hand clutching the certificate so tightly that it almost tore. I didn't need praise. I just needed recognition. But for years, it never came. My family held a reunion every year on the birthday of my grandfather, a man as strict as my father and the source of that achievement mindset. It was an occasion for the whole family to gather at my grandparents' house, eat, tell stories, boast about achievements, and exchange information like an annual conference. Every year, I returned there with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Anticipation to see my mother, sisters, and brothers, but anxiety because I knew my father's view would not change. I would be the one left out of the congratulations, the one mentioned with polite smiles and concerned looks from relatives. "What are you doing now?" I used to think I could handle it. I didn't need recognition. I had students who loved me. I had colleagues who respected me. I had an independent life. But deep inside there was a rift that would never heal. A rift from never feeling accepted in my own family. Feeling excluded not because of my fault, but because I chose a different path than they expected. This year's gathering coincided with Grandpa's 70th birthday, so the family planned it on a larger scale than usual. They hired a private chef, set up a garden tent, decorated it, and filmed it professionally. Before the party, everyone was asked to prepare short speeches to congratulate Grandpa and share pride in the achievements of family members. I knew right away that I had no place in those speeches. I was about to decline to attend, but my mother called and said, "You go home. Just be there." I didn't want to upset her, so I went home. I brought a small gift for Grandpa, a few rare history books that I knew he would like, and a fake smile that I had been practicing in front of the mirror for 3 days. That evening, when the party began, everything went exactly as I had expected. The children were introduced in order. My sister was introduced at length by my father as a source of great pride. My brother was hailed as the hope of Vietnam's technology industry. Then came me. Nothing. No one asked me to speak. No one mentioned my name. I stood at the end of the table, listened to all the toasts, polite applause, and silence. I thought it would end like every year, with indifference. But my father had his own plans. When he rose to make his final speech, raising his glass, he began with the traditional compliments to his grandfather, then moved on to the pride of the family. He turned to my sister and said, "You are a shining example to the next generation." Then he looked at my sister, smiling with satisfaction. "You make me believe that the future still belongs to those who dare to think big." Then he paused, his eyes sweeping over me, sitting quietly at the corner of the table. He took a sip of wine, then spoke clearly, slowly, word by word. "I am proud of all my children, except one." The air suddenly froze. A few awkward laughs rang out, thinking he was joking, but then everyone realized he was completely serious. No apology, no embarrassment. He looked straight at me. That gaze seemed to erase me from this family's existence. My mother lowered her head. My sister and brother were stunned. My relatives looked at me with pity, but no one said anything. I didn't know what hurt more, the public humiliation or the complicit silence of my relatives. But what he didn't know was that I had something to say too. Not about me, about him. And I was ready to say it, that very night, in front of everyone.
I had thought that I could endure all of my father's contempt, that if I kept quiet and continued to live a good life, he would eventually see my true worth. But it turned out that I was wrong. That meeting was not only a blow to my self-esteem, but also the turning point that made me give up all hope of ever gaining his recognition. After he stood up to raise his glass and declared, "I am proud of all my children except one," in front of 30 relatives, everything around me froze. The air was dead silent. My mother bowed her head and said nothing. My sister turned away, avoiding my gaze. My brother looked down at his plate of food in confusion, as if he hadn't seen me, he wouldn't have been caught up in this scene. And he looked at me unblinking, as if daring me to react, as if he wanted to imprint that humiliation on my mind once more, clearly, distinctly. "You are my useless son." I don't remember what I did in the next few seconds. All I know is that my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst, my hands were shaking slightly, and my throat was so tight that I couldn't say a word. I put my glass down on the table, slowly got up, and walked away from the banquet, head held high, without saying a word, without apologizing, without explaining. I didn't run away. I retreated. But I didn't give up. Something inside me burned. And for the first time in my life, I didn't try to extinguish it. I left the theater and headed straight for the back garden, where it was quieter and no one dared to follow. I needed a few minutes to catch my breath, to keep myself from bursting into tears in the crowd. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. But in my head, all the memories that had been repressed for years began to resurface. The times he called me a burden, the times he stopped my mother from sending me to college because it was a waste of money. The times I was compared, belittled, ignored at gatherings, the sarcasm when I bought my first car on his teacher's salary, which he had always considered a cheap thing. It all came rushing back, accompanied by a rage I had never dared to express. This time I wouldn't be silent. But I also didn't want to retaliate childishly. I wanted him to feel exactly what I had felt, a public humiliation, a blow to a reputation he had always considered sacrosanct. And then I remembered something. Something I had known for years but had never dared to say. A secret my father had thought was buried. When I was a freshman in college, I came home unexpectedly and unannounced. I had gone home without calling anyone, because my mother had told me she had left some tuition money in an envelope in the kitchen drawer. I remember it was a weekday around noon, and I thought my parents wouldn't be home. But the door was unlocked. I walked in and heard laughter from upstairs. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but what I heard stuck with me. It was my father, very clearly, saying to someone on the phone, "As long as that kid thinks he's my son, this is under control." Then a woman's voice mocking, "You're such a hypocrite, raising other people's children and then lying to your wife behind their backs." My father replied, "Your wife doesn't know anything. And if she did, she would have turned a blind eye. It's been a long time." I didn't understand everything at that moment, I was just stunned. I quietly withdrew, walked out of the house without taking the tuition envelope, and I couldn't sleep that night. After that, I secretly investigated. Through a few conversations with an elderly neighbor who lived nearby, I heard rumors about my father, that he had an extramarital affair with a woman who used to work as an accountant at the company he managed. Rumors said that he had a child from another province. No one had any evidence, just whispers, but everyone knew that my father had secretly transferred an apartment to a strange woman's name many years ago. I had thought that I would never touch that. I did not want to be the one who used secrets as weapons. But tonight, when he humiliated me in front of the whole family, all boundaries had been crossed. I returned to the banquet hall about 15 minutes later, just as the speeches were about to end. Everyone was a little surprised to see me return. I stepped forward and asked my cousin for the microphone. All eyes were on me. My father stared at me, his eyes wary. I knew he expected me to make a scene of crying or blaming. But I didn't. I took the microphone and spoke in a cold, calm voice. Let me say something. Not to talk about my achievements, but to tell a story that many people here may not have heard. When I was 19, I accidentally overheard a phone call between my father and a woman. That woman called him a hypocrite. When I looked into it, I learned that he had been having an extramarital affair for many years. Some even said that he had a child with another woman, and that he had secretly provided financial support for that woman. The whole theater was silent. Continued. I kept this secret for 10 years. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to destroy my family. I thought if I lived right, did good things, people would see me for who I was, not by comparison or contempt. But tonight, when my father told everyone that he was proud of everyone but me, I realized one thing. My silence only gave him the right to continue to trample on others. And I don't want to continue being the silent one. No one reacted. Some looked at my father, waiting for him to retort. But he said nothing. His face was pale. His lips were pressed together. I looked straight at him and said the last thing. I don't need you to be proud of me. But I want you to know, the father everyone always praises is not as perfect as you make him out to be. And I have never been ashamed of teaching. I am only ashamed of spending so many years in silence for fear of losing recognition from someone who doesn't deserve it. I put down the microphone and left the party. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't look for a look of approval. I didn't need applause. All I felt was a tremendous sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just a listener. I was a teller. And this time the story was about the truth. About a truth that he couldn't erase with platitudes. That night my phone rang constantly. My mother called. My sister texted. Even a few relatives texted to check in. But I didn't answer. I sat alone in my small apartment, with a cold cup of tea and a dim nightlight. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just felt empty. Because even though I had done what I had to do, the price of truth was always brokenness. And I knew from that moment on my family would never be the same. But maybe it was a new beginning, a truer, braver version of myself. I slammed the door behind me, barely breathing, my heart pounding like a war drum in my ears. The words my father had shouted across the family reunion were still echoing inside my skull, poisonous and heavy. I'm proud of all my children, except for the loser. That loser was me. And everyone had heard it. The room had fallen so silent you could hear the ice melt in the punch bowl. Some looked away in shame, some smirked, others pretended not to notice. And my mother, her eyes filled with pain and fatigue, said nothing. She never did. I sat in my car in the driveway for hours, the engine cold and dead, but my blood boiling. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn my father's approval, from acing my classes to graduating college on my own dime, to taking care of my sick grandmother when no one else could be bothered. But none of it mattered. Not when my siblings were doctors, lawyers, real successes in his eyes. I was just the creative failure. The embarrassment. The one he never brought up to his colleagues. But tonight he went a step further. He didn't just ignore me. He annihilated me. Publicly. With everyone watching. I could have let it go. Again. I could have swallowed it like I always did. But that night something cracked. No, something woke up. Started with a box. A dusty, neglected box buried deep in the attic of my childhood home. I remembered stumbling on it years ago. I must have been 14, and opening it out of innocent curiosity. Inside were envelopes, all sealed and stamped from cities I'd never heard of. Some were addressed to my father under a different last name. One even had a photo inside. A woman holding a baby, both smiling, and my father standing beside them, his hand on the baby's shoulder. Back then I hadn't understood. I thought maybe it was from a film set or some business project. But now, as an adult, I remembered the woman's name written on the back. For Mark from Sarah. 2003, our secret forever. Mark. My father's middle name. I didn't sleep that night. I drove to the old house at 4 a.m. The attic door creaked like a ghost holding its breath. The box was still there. Still sealed. Tore it open. Letters. Dozens of them. Some typed, some handwritten. All from the same woman, Sarah Mayfield. They spanned over a decade, from the late 90s into the early 2010s. In each letter she referred to our daughter, a girl named Emily. She wrote about how much Emily looked like him, about her first steps, her birthday parties, her questions about where Daddy is. She begged him to come see them. She pleaded for support, not just financial but emotional. I sat there, heart in my throat, reading every word. My father, the man who publicly condemned me, had an entire second family. Daughter, a child he completely abandoned. And he didn't just walk away. He hid her from all of us. I found an old disposable camera in the box. I had the photos developed at a 24-hour service downtown. When I saw the images, my stomach turned. There he was, my father. Smiling, no, glowing, with a little girl in a princess dress. Her arms wrapped tightly around his neck. He looked happy, freer than I'd ever seen him. How long had he been living a lie? I didn't say anything to anyone yet. Not to my mom. Not to my siblings. Not even to my therapist, who had spent months trying to help me detangle my twisted self-worth from my father's validation. Instead, I printed out every photo, photocopied the letters, and wrote down dates, locations, and names. Built a timeline. Case file. Like a lawyer preparing for trial, except this trial would be held in front of the one jury he never expected. his perfect, judgmental, self-righteous family. The family reunion wasn't over. It was a weekend-long affair, hosted at my uncle's ranch. I had left after the dinner disaster, but the next day was the group photo brunch, when everyone dressed in matching shirts, smiled like they weren't rotting inside, and pretended to be one big happy clan. It was his favorite part of the year, his time to shine. I returned uninvited. Everyone stared as I walked onto the patio, holding a large manila envelope in one hand, and my phone in the other. My father, standing near the grill with his whiskey and his smug grin, froze. He saw me, and I saw it in his eyes, a flicker of something he rarely showed, fear. "Mark," I said his middle name like it was a curse. "You forgot someone in this year's photo." He blinked. "Excuse me." I pulled out the first photo, the one of him holding Emily on her 5th birthday. I held it high for everyone to see. "Say hi to your other daughter, Emily, born 2003. Raised without a father because you were too much of a coward to admit she existed." Audible. Scattered across the crowd like landmines. My mom stood up, hand to her chest. My brother, the golden boy surgeon, dropped his mimosa. "I don't know what you think you're doing," my father said, trying to recover. His voice trembled. "This is a sick joke." "Is it?" I flipped through the letters, holding one up. Shall I read the part where Sarah wrote, "Emily cried last night because she asked why Daddy never calls"? Another letter. "It's been 5 years since we last saw you, Mark. She started asking if you're dead." I looked straight into his eyes. "Want me to go on?" He charged toward me, tried to grab the letters from my hand. Backed up. "Don't," I warned, voice cold. "Lay one finger on me and I post everything. The photos, the letters, the timeline, straight to your employer's ethics board. And to every newspaper that ever quoted you as a model of family leadership." He froze again. I looked at my mother. Her face had crumpled into something ancient and broken. But there were no tears. Just quiet resignation. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said. "I wanted to protect you from this. But after what he did yesterday, what he said about me, I realized the only thing worse than being called a loser in front of my own family is staying silent about the man who abandoned too." Beat of silence. And then my uncle, my father's brother, stepped forward. "Is it true?" he asked my father. My father didn't speak. "Is it true?" he shouted. Still nothing. That silence was answer enough. People began murmuring. Some walked away. Others stood there, stunned. My siblings said nothing. Not because they doubted me, but because deep down they knew. They'd always known something was wrong. Something toxic. I walked to the table where the matching family reunion shirts were stacked in neat piles. I picked one up, smiled, and dropped it in the trash can. "Family isn't just blood," I said. "It's honesty, loyalty, respect. I may not have had that growing up, but I'll damn well build it from here on out, with people who deserve it." Then I walked away. The patio behind me dissolved into a chaotic hum of whispered disbelief and collapsing reputations. But I didn't look back. I didn't sleep that night. Again. Not because of regret, no, that was long gone, but because of the rush. The adrenaline. The raw, trembling satisfaction of watching my father, the man who had always wielded power over me like a hammer, crumble without raising a single hand. But it wasn't enough. The exposure was just the beginning. I had delivered the truth like a punch, but the cleanup, the reckoning, the consequences, they were still to come. And this time I wouldn't just make him uncomfortable. I'd make him face everything he ran from, everything he buried. I started with Emily. It had taken me all of 2 hours to track her down. I still had the return addresses from Sarah's letters. The final one, dated 5 years ago, came from Asheville, North Carolina. A quick search on social media, a few photos cross-referenced, and I found her. Emily Mayfi, 22. Waiting to. I hesitated before messaging her. What was I even supposed to say? "Hi, I'm the son of the man who abandoned you and pretended you didn't exist for 2 decades. But after everything my father had done, to her, to me, to my mother, I knew she deserved the truth. So I sent her one photo. The one of her and my father on her 5th birthday. I followed it with one sentence. "I think we are." She responded in less. What followed was a 6-hour video call that changed both our lives. Emily had questions. Hundreds of them, and I had answers. She knew he was gone, that he had disappeared, but she didn't know why. Her mother had tried to protect her, and in doing so, shielded her from the full truth, that he chose to us like nothing else. "I always thought it was me," she said quietly. "Like maybe No," I said. "You were just inconvenient. To hi, but not anymore." Emily didn't just agree to meet, she insisted. She flew out within the week. And while I picked her up from the airport, my father's world was already beginning to unravel. You see, he wasn't just a smug patriarch with a superiority complex. He was a well-respected public figure, a consultant on family integration and leadership for a private educational nonprofit. His lectures, his books, his interviews, they were all built on the image of a perfect household, of 3 successful children raised by a loving and present father. I still remember one of his quotes: "Fatherhood isn't about being there when it's easy. It's about showing up when it's hard." That line made the cover of his memoir. So I took that cover and I torched it. With Emily's consent, we create a full exposure. We wrote it together. Not out of vengeance but out of justice. We titled it, "The Forgotten Daughter, a True Story of Abandonment Behind America's Favorite Family Man." In it, we include the photos, the letters, and our full story. 2 sides of the same father, finally united in truth. And we didn't just upload it to some obscure blog. Emily's journalism loved professors it. They pitched it to a mid-sized outlet, one that had interviewed my father 5 years ago. And they remembered him. When they fact-checked the story and verified the letters and dates, they not only agreed to run it, they gave it a full feature. On Monday morning it dropped. The fallout was swift. Board members from his nonprofit began issuing statements. His publisher quietly delisted his book from their main page. His speaking engagements disappeared. His podcast, the one with over 200,000 subscribers, went radio silent. But I wasn't done. Because there was still Mom. For years, she had played the role of the quiet, submissive wife. Always present, never confrontational. But I knew now, from the way she looked at those letters, that part of her had known. Maybe not the full extent, but enough to feel the weight of it pressing on her for years. I sat her down. No anger. No accusations. Just truth. He cheated on you. He had another daughter. And he abandoned her. Just like he emotionally abandoned me. She cried. Not loudly. Not broken. But like someone finally releasing a breath held in for 20 years. "I thought I was crazy," she whispered. "Every time he disappeared for work, every time he got cold. I thought maybe it was me. It wasn't." I handed her a copy of the exposé. I gave her the financial records we dug up. Emily and I had traced thousands of dollars in cash withdrawals over the years that lined up suspiciously with trips he took to conferences. She now had everything she needed. And then, for the first time in decades, my mother took control. She filed for divorce. And not just quietly. She hired a shark of a lawyer who used the article, the evidence, the timing, everything, to build a case for not just divorce but public moral misconduct. The court process was ugly. My father tried to fight, of course. He screamed about defamation, slander, betrayal. He tried to drag me into court for emotional distress. But it didn't matter. The truth was out. And the best part, Emily showed up. In person. She completed, calmly, clearly, unwavering. She told the court how he ignored her birthdays, how he sent money once a year in a plain envelope with no note, how he refused to meet her when she was 13, the same year he published a book about teen parenting. When she stepped down, she passed by me and held my hand. I've never felt stronger. In the end, my mother got the house. She got alimony. She got her name back. My father got a condo near the airport and a LinkedIn profile no one replied to anymore. His old friends distanced themselves. His publisher dropped him officially. His podcast disappeared. And the non-profits. They replaced him with a single mother who wrote an essay called, "Being a Real Parent Means Not Running." I didn't need to say anything else. The world speaks for me. But the final strike, the one that truly ended it, came from Emily. She started her own podcast, titled, The Father Gap. Each week, she invited guests who grew up without a present father, whether due to abandonment, hindered emotional neglect, and helped them share their stories. Grew fast. It went viral. And in episode 4 she brought me on. We told the whole story. Together. Not to shame. Not to humiliate. But to liberate. You can't choose the father you're born with, Emily said on the air. But you can choose the person who deserves your love. And when the episode ended, we looked at each other. Two strangers connected by blood, pain, and now healing, and we smiled. Not because we'd won, but because we were free. It's strange how silence can say more than shouting ever could. After everything came out, after the emails were read, the bank statements dissected, and my father was no longer standing at the center of every conversation with his slick charisma and smokescreen morality, the family fell quiet. Not just the awkward kind of quiet that follows an argument, but the kind that settles deep like fog on a lake that refuses to lift. People stopped looking at me with confusion. They started looking at me with something else, something closer to respect, and pity, and guilt. Because when a parent fails you, people rarely acknowledge it openly. Society teaches us to blame the child. Black sheep. The rebel. The disappointment. But I wasn't disappointed. I was the mirror. And when you show people a mirror, not everyone is ready to look. In the days following my father's public fall from grace, the narrative around me began to shift. The same aunts and uncles who once praised him as the pillar of our family now whisper behind closed doors about all the red flags they had ignored. The cousins who once rolled their eyes at my dramatic tendencies started asking questions. Thoughtful ones. Ones I never thought they'd care to ask. But that's not where the story ends. Because stories like this, family stories, they don't end with arrests or shame or even justice. They end in choice. The choice of who you want to be now that the chains are off. See, growing up under a man like my father was like living inside a glass house with the lights always on. Everything looked pristine on the outside. Successful business, nice home, Sunday dinners, family vacations. But inside we tiptoed around truths like broken glass. You didn't speak unless spoken loudly. You didn't challenge authority. You didn't ask about the locked drawer in his office or why mom cried herself to sleep some nights when she thought we couldn't hear. You just smiled. And God forbid you ever showed emotion. Emotions make you weak. Emotions make you ungrateful. Emotions made you, me. But after exposing him, after tearing down the pedestal he built out of lies and manipulation, I felt something I hadn't in years. Stillness. Not silence, stillness. The kind that comes when the storm has passed and everything is finally yours to rebuild. I moved out within 2 weeks of the reunion. I used the savings I had quietly built from tutoring and odd gigs, and I got a small studio apartment. It wasn't glamorous. The bathroom sink leaked, the walls were paper thin, and I had to kill 3 roaches on the first night. But it was mine. There were no footsteps angrily down the hallway. No random inspections of my possessions. No backhanded comments about my wasted potential, or my emotional instability. Just me. And silence. And the freedom to exhale. And let me tell you something that may sound strange. For the first few weeks, I didn't know what to do with my freedom. I kept waiting for the knock on the door. For the yelling. For someone to say, "You went too far." But it never came. Not even from him. Because cowards rarely fight in the daylight. Instead, I got messages from distant relatives. Apologies. Encouragement. One even told me that my father had stolen money from a trust fund meant for her daughter's education. She'd never had the proof until now. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a slow ripple of truth that keeps moving long after you've thrown the stone. Now, people often ask me if I regret what I did. If I wish I had just kept my head down for the sake of family harmony. If I think he deserved to be exposed like that. Here's the truth. I don't regret anything. Because what no one tells you is that family harmony, built on secrets, isn't peace. It's just silent suffering. It's just one person carrying the weight of everyone else's comfort. And eventually it crushes you. What I did, standing up there on that patio telling the truth, I didn't do it to destroy my father. I did it to save myself. And maybe, in some way, to save the next kid in our family who's told to smile and stay quiet. You see, in every family there are storytellers and there are secret keepers. The secret keepers tell you you're wrong, that your feelings are exaggerated, that what you saw or heard or experienced wasn't that bad. They rewrite history in real time, gaslight you into oblivion, and then blame you when the cracks start showing. But the storytellers, those brave enough to say, this is what really happened, they're the ones who started revolutions. Not the kind with fire and banners. The kind with truth. The kind that sets people free. And I finally understand now why my father hated my passion for the arts, for storytelling, for truth-telling. Because people like him can't survive in the light. He needed control. He needed silence. It gave him exposure. The beautiful irony. The very thing he mocked me for. My sensitivity, my dramatic nature, my refusal to conform, is what made me strong enough to stand up to him. To survive him. And now, I get to live a life that isn't curated for someone else's ego. I started therapy. I found friends who feel like family. I auditioned for a local play, got a lead role, and for the first time ever, I cried on stage not because I was broken, but because I was whole enough to feel it all and own it. I even started a podcast, anonymous at first, sharing stories of family betrayal and personal rebirth. Hundreds of people listening. Then thousands. Some wrote in to share their own stories. Some just said, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." And that's the thing, isn't it? Shame only survives in silence. But stories, everything survives. So if you're watching this and you've been made to feel like you're the problem because you dared to speak up, because you question the narrative, because you refuse to pretend, let me tell you right now, you're not the problem. You're the beginning of the solution. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refusing to lie for people who would never tell the truth for you. Sometimes the most loving act is to walk away from a toxic family system, even if it means walking alone for a while. Because healing is lonely, first, but it's honest. And honest people find each other. If there's one thing I learned through all this, it's that blood truth may be thicker than water, but cuts deeper than both. And in the end, the only loyalty worth having is the kind built on respect, not fear. My father tried to make an example out of me. He did. But I flipped the script. I became the author of my own life. And you can too. Listen. Share your truth. If this story struck a nerve, if it made you pause, reflect, or even rethink your own definition of family, then don't let it fade into just another video in your feed. At Judgy Tales, we tell more than stories. We hold a mirror up to the darkest corners of human behavior and ask, would you stay silent or would you speak up? Because stories like this, they don't just entertain. They challenge. They empower. They remind us that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, always deserves a voice. So if you believe that silence protects the wrong people, if you believe that accountability should start at home, and if you believe that no one, no matter how powerful, should be safe from the consequences of their actions, then do this. Ear listen. Balance scale judge. Beach balloon join the conversation. Hit that like button to show you're not afraid of uncomfortable truths. Subscribe so you never miss another raw, unfiltered tale from the edge of justice. And tap that notification bell so you're the first to witness our next story of betrayal, revenge, or redemption. Because in a world full of secrets, your judgment matters. And remember, this isn't just content. This is twisted justice. See you in the next tale.